Welcome! In this series of short videos, we will look at topics for the PowerBasic Windows compiler. Today we will look again at the use of dynamic forms in your application. In our last video, we prepared a dynamic form, which when a button was clicked, additional fields and labels would appear on the screen, up until the point of when the sixth label was added, and then they could be removed again. This was achieved by having all 6 labels and text boxes on the form, but initially only the first label and text box was visible, and as the button was pressed, the next available label and text box was made visible. We're going to do something similar today, but we're not going to initialize all the text boxes and labels at the beginning of the form. We're going to create those dynamically each time the button is pressed. Let's have a look at the code. If we go to our form, we'll see the code where each of the labels and the text boxes is actually added to the form. What we'll do then initially is we will remove everything but the first label and the first text box. So we're left now with one label and one text box on screen. And we're going to take the code and cut that out of the form altogether. So from within this event handler, we're going to trigger the call to a brand new function. And we'll paste the code in there. Now this function is going to take a number of parameters. The first parameter being the dialog handle. The second parameter will be the field number we want to add. Now initially there will be absolutely no fields on the screen, and the first time we press this button we will add the first 2 fields. So we have a parameter for the field number. So what we will want is we will want a unique identifier for each of these fields. So I think we'll have a constant which we will set up for the starting number of the fields. So we'll have one for start label and one for start text box. And we're going to add on to that the field number we're passing in. And we'll just fold this down so you can see it a wee bit easier. So this will determine the unique identifier. We'll declare this constant in a moment. And these will be the coordinates on the screen where this field is going to appear. Now we'll need to change these because otherwise the field will be overwritten every time on the same location. And this field will then be equal to the format of the field number. And the same for the text box. So all we have to do now is to position them on screen. So we need to work out the X and Y coordinates where these are going to appear. I left these coordinates in so we have somewhere to start. However, before we go any further, let's declare these 2 constants. We'll keep these well away from the existing constants. Now as the form was created using dialog units, all these numbers are in dialog units. So 25 from the left hand side of the screen, 56 down from the top, it's going to be 100 dialog units wide and 10 high. These last 2 are not going to change, the 25 is not going to change, but the 56 position from the top of the screen will change based on the field number. So this will be a calculated field. So we'll create a variable for an offset. And the offset will go in here. Now we know it's going to be at least 56 down from the top of the screen, and we want to add on to that the long field -1 multiplied by, now we know these are going to be 10 units high, so let's go for 15. Right, so that should get those located properly, and we'll do exactly the same for the text boxes. So we call our first one, this should position the first one at 56, and the next one will be 56 plus 15, and the next one after that it will be 30 further down. So we will call this fun display fields every time our button is pressed. So if we go back to our callback function, we've got quite a lot of code in here we don't actually need anymore. So I'm just going to bulk comment this out, and the same on the code which is at the moment underneath the button. So when the button is pressed, what we will do is we will call the display fields with our parameters. First of all, the handle of the dialog, and the next one being our field number. Now, a long field we haven't declared in here yet, so we'll declare this up at the top. And I think we will make this a static variable, so that every time we come into the callback function, it remembers what the number is. So the first field, we will initialize it as 1 in our initialization routine. So the first time the form gets shown, the field will be 1. And once the display field has actually been displayed, we will then increment that number. So let's try a quick compile. Compiles quite cleanly, and let's run our program. Now there's our dialog on the screen with no text boxes or labels being shown. So if we click the button once, the first field will appear. We click it again, the next one will appear, and it will keep adding new fields until it runs out of dialog space. So we've quite happily added extra fields to the screen, just on the clicking of a button. Now we can go a little further in our display fields. Now one thing we will add is, since we have set the colour in here, we'll see if we can get it to display the colour on screen by redrawing the control once the colour has been set. Let's try that. That's better. Now we can use the same logic as we did before, in that once we get to a number, we can then start to decrement them again. So let's see if we can remove them. So we go back to our callback function. Now we're incrementing this variable here, the long field, every time the button's pressed. So what we'll want to do is we'll want to do a test on long field. Let's do it on a select statement. So when it gets to 10, we don't want to go any further. So we will do as we did before. We had a variable in here called long increment. Now we'll bring that one back in, because that's just what we're after. Long increment is either going to be a plus or a minus. So initially it's going to be a plus, and then once we get to 10, we will change that value to a -1. And when we get back to 1 again, we will change it back to 1. So we want something inside display fields to know which direction we're actually heading in, to know whether we're either adding or removing objects from the screen. So we'll pass in an extra parameter to indicate our direction. Are we going up or down? So we go back to display fields and we'll put our extra parameter in. So this tells us whether we want to add a new object to the screen or remove the last one we added. So we'll put a little case statement in here. And if the case is 1, we must be adding objects. So we'll just indent all of these, and we'll put a case in for a -1. And before we start putting code in for that, let's just check to see our program still works as expected. What we missed? It should be an end select. Oh, we didn't declare long field. Ah, we've misspelt long field. Alright, our program works quite happily to add new fields. Now when it gets to 10, which it doesn't, it will go no further. So we'll make that 11 then. So we get 10th one on the screen. So we want to go down now. So let's go back to our display fields. So rather than adding a new object, we want to remove the object. So we can use a control kill command to erase it. And this is our pointer to the object. And we'll do the same for our text box. Now let's just try that and see. Oh, we missed out a percentage sign. Right, there we are, adding quite happily up until we get to number 10. Yep, it's removing quite happily now as we press the buttons. There they go. And it's now adding again. So we've replicated the logic we had in our last program, but we didn't define all the labels on the form initially. So this gives you a way of parachuting an object into a screen that's never had that. While we have created these objects dynamically on the form, should you wish to perform any function on an event, for example when a box has actually been clicked on, you would need to have an entry in the event handler to handle that. And that would have to be driven by the unique number, which we know was started in a range of 4000 for the labels and 4010 for the text boxes. But this could quite easily be done in the callback function. However, we'll save that one for the next video. That's it for today. Thank you for watching.